In the 1990s, every kitchen had its secrets. The first thing every housewife knew was how to make a meal that could stretch, a meal that could comfort, a meal that could bring a family together after a long day. In an era before the internet and the endless scroll of food blogs, there was a different kind of culinary wisdom, one passed down through handwritten recipe cards and whispered conversations over the backyard fence. This was the age of the casserole, the undisputed king of the weeknight dinner. It was a time when a 9 by 13-inch baking dish held the power to solve almost any problem, from a last-minute potluck contribution to a hearty meal for a growing family. The first and most important of these secrets was the Tuna Noodle Casserole. It was a simple dish, a humble combination of canned tuna, egg noodles, and a can of cream of mushroom soup, but it was a dish that was greater than the sum of its parts. It was a creamy, savory, and deeply satisfying meal that was on regular rotation in almost every household. It was the taste of childhood for a generation, a warm, comforting hug in a Pyrex dish. The slightly salty, fishy flavor of the tuna, combined with the earthy creaminess of the mushroom soup and the soft, yielding texture of the egg noodles, created a symphony of flavors and textures that was both simple and profound. And the crunchy, buttery breadcrumb topping was the perfect finishing touch, a golden crown on a dish that was fit for a king, or at least a hungry family of four. The Tuna Noodle Casserole was the gateway to a whole universe of one-dish wonders. The 1990s were a veritable golden age for the casserole, a time when creativity and convenience converged in a symphony of cheesy, creamy goodness. Another icon of the era was the Tater Tot Casserole, a dish that was as fun to say as it was to eat. Known as hot dish in the upper Midwest, this casserole was a masterpiece of textural contrast. A savory foundation of seasoned ground beef and condensed soup was crowned with a perfectly arranged layer of golden, crispy tater tots. It was a dish that was both a comfort food and a conversation starter, a meal that could coax even the pickiest of eaters to the dinner table. It was the kind of meal that would appear on a cold, rainy Tuesday, a beacon of warmth and cheesy delight that could make any day feel like a special occasion. The ground beef, browned with onions and garlic, provided a savory and substantial base, while the cream of mushroom soup added a rich and creamy element that tied everything together. And the tater tots, those little pillows of potatoy goodness, were the star of the show, their crispy exteriors giving way to a soft and fluffy interior. It was a dish that was both playful and satisfying, a culinary high five at the end of a long day. And then there was the King Ranch Chicken Casserole, a dish that brought a touch of Tex-Mex flair to the suburban dinner table. This was not your average casserole. It was a bold and flavorful creation, a layered concoction of shredded chicken, corn tortillas, and a zesty chili spike cream sauce. It was a dish that was both exotic and approachable, a culinary adventure that didn't require a passport. It was the perfect meal for a Friday night, a festive and celebratory dish that signaled the start of the weekend. It was a taste of the American Southwest, a culinary postcard from a place where the flavors were as big and bold as the landscape. The chicken, often boiled and shredded, was tender and juicy, while the corn tortillas, softened in the creamy sauce, provided a satisfyingly chewy texture. The sauce, a blend of cream of chicken soup, cream of mushroom soup, and a can of Rotel tomatoes and green chilies, was the heart and soul of the dish, a spicy, savory, and slightly tangy concoction that was impossible to resist. And the generous layer of melted cheddar cheese on top was the perfect finishing touch, a gooey and golden blanket that brought everything together in a symphony of Tex-Mex flavor. Of course, no exploration of 1990s casseroles would be complete without a nod to the ultimate convenience food, Hamburger Helper. While technically a one-pot meal, it was often given the casserole treatment, baked in a dish with a generous layer of melted cheese on top. It was a meal that came in a box, a promise of a hot and satisfying dinner in under 30 minutes. It was a lifesaver for busy working mothers, a reliable and affordable way to feed a hungry family. And while the exact recipes have evolved over the years, the memory of that cheesy, beefy, and slightly artificial flavor is a powerful trigger for nostalgia. It was a taste of a time when convenience was not a dirty word, but a welcome and necessary part of modern life. The ground beef, browned and crumbled, was the star of the show, while the pasta, cooked in the same pot, soaked up all the savory, cheesy goodness of the sauce. And the sauce, a mysterious and magical powder that came in a little packet, was the secret to the dish's success, a proprietary blend of spices and seasonings that was both familiar and exotic. It was a meal that was both a guilty pleasure and a source of genuine comfort, a culinary paradox that was perfectly at home in the 1990s. For those seeking a slightly more sophisticated casserole experience, there was the chicken divan. This was a dish that was often reserved for special occasions, a casserole that was elegant enough for company. It was a creamy and decadent combination of tender chicken and bright green broccoli florets, all bathed in a rich and cheesy Mornay sauce. It was a dish that was both comforting and impressive, a culinary sleight of hand that could turn a few simple ingredients into a meal that was fit for a king. It was a taste of classic French cuisine, filtered through the lens of American convenience. The chicken, often poached or roasted, was tender and succulent, while the broccoli, lightly steamed, provided a fresh and vibrant counterpoint to the richness of the sauce. The sauce, a classic Mornay made with butter, flour, milk, and cheese, was the star of the show, a velvety and decadent concoction that was both elegant and comforting. And the crunchy, buttery breadcrumb topping was the perfect finishing touch, a golden and crispy crown on a dish that was fit for a queen. And let's not forget the humble yet beloved Green Bean Casserole. While it may be most closely associated with the Thanksgiving holiday, it was a dish that made regular appearances on the dinner table throughout the year. It was a simple and unassuming dish, a combination of canned green beans, cream of mushroom soup, and a can of crispy fried onions. It was a dish that was often overlooked, but it was a dish that was always there, a reliable and comforting presence on the holiday buffet. It was a taste of tradition, a culinary heirloom that was passed down from generation to generation. The green beans, soft and tender, were the heart of the dish, while the cream of mushroom soup provided a savory and creamy base, and the crispy fried onions, both mixed into the casserole and sprinkled on top, were the secret to the dish's success, a salty, crunchy, and slightly sweet element that was impossible to resist. It was a dish that was both a side and a star, a culinary chameleon that could adapt to any occasion. Finally, there was the curious case of the funeral potatoes. Despite its somber name, this was a dish that was associated with gatherings of all kinds, from potlucks to family reunions. It was a rich and cheesy potato casserole made with frozen hash browns, sour cream, and a crunchy, buttery cornflake topping. It was a dish that was both simple and sublime, a testament to the transformative power of a few humble ingredients. It was a symbol of community, a dish that was meant to be shared, a culinary expression of comfort and support. The hash browns, thawed and mixed with the other ingredients, provided a hearty and satisfying base, while the sour cream and cream of chicken soup added a tangy and creamy element that was both rich and refreshing. And the cornflake topping, crushed and mixed with melted butter, was the perfect finishing touch, a sweet and crunchy crust that was the perfect counterpoint to the creamy potatoes. It was a dish that was both a celebration and a consolation, a culinary hug in a 9 by 13-inch pan. The magic of the 1990s casserole was its reliance on a very specific set of ingredients, a culinary time capsule of a bygone era. The undisputed star of the show was the can of condensed soup. Cream of mushroom, cream of chicken, cream of celery. These were the holy trinity of the casserole world. They were the secret weapon in every 90s mom's arsenal, a shortcut to a creamy, savory sauce that could be whipped up in a matter of minutes. It was a culinary innovation that had been around for decades, but it was in the 1990s that it reached its zenith, a symbol of a time when convenience was the ultimate luxury. The soups were a marvel of modern food science, a shelf-stable product that could be transformed into a rich and flavorful sauce with the addition of a little milk or water. They were a blank canvas, a starting point for a seemingly endless variety of culinary creations. And they were a symbol of a time when the kitchen was a place of practicality, not performance. Another key player in the 90s casserole game was processed cheese. Velveeta, Cheese Whiz, and Kraft Singles were the go-to choices for that perfectly smooth, melt-in-your-mouth texture. These were not the artisanal, aged cheddars of today. They were products of a different time, a time when a consistent and reliable melt was more important than a complex flavor profile. And while some may turn up their noses at the thought of using processed cheese, there is no denying that it was an essential component of that classic 90s casserole experience. The cheese was a modern marvel, a product of industrial food production that was designed for maximum meltability. It was a cheese that was engineered for convenience, a cheese that could be sliced, cubed, or melted with ease. And it was a cheese that was a symbol of a time when the focus was on feeding the family, not on impressing the food snobs. Frozen vegetables were another hallmark of the 90s casserole. They were a modern marvel, a way to have fresh vegetables on hand at all times without the risk of spoilage. They were a product of the post-war boom in home freezers, a symbol of a new era of domestic efficiency. And while they may not have had the same vibrant flavor and crisp texture as their fresh counterparts, they were a practical and affordable way way to add a touch of green to the dinner plate. The vegetables were a testament to the power of technology, a way to preserve the bounty of the harvest for months on end. They were a symbol of a time when the future was bright and anything seemed possible. In today's world of from-scratch cooking and farm-to-table dining, it's easy to look back at the 1990s with a sense of culinary superiority. But to do so would be to miss the point. The 1990s were not a time of culinary ignorance. They were a time of culinary pragmatism. It was a time when a growing number of women were entering the workforce, and the demands on their time were greater than ever before. The casserole, with its reliance on convenience ingredients and its one-dish simplicity, was a response to this new reality. It was a way for busy mothers to put a hot, home-cooked meal on the table without spending hours in the kitchen. It was a symbol of a time when the family dinner was a non-negotiable, a sacred ritual that was worth preserving, even in the face of a changing world. To dismiss the casseroles of the 1990s as nothing more than a collection of processed ingredients would be a disservice to the women who made them. These were not just meals. They were acts of love, expressions of care and creativity in a world that was often demanding and unforgiving. There is a lesson to be learned from the resourcefulness of these 90s moms who could take a can of soup, a box of pasta, and a pound of ground beef and turn it into a meal that would be remembered for years to come. There is a lesson in their pragmatism, their willingness to embrace convenience in the service of a greater good, a happy and well-fed family. And there is a lesson in the sense of community that was built around these simple, home-cooked meals. The potluck, the church supper, the neighborhood block party, these were the places where the casserole truly shone, a symbol of a time when people came together to share food and fellowship. In an age of social media and performative perfection, there is something deeply refreshing about the unpretentious honesty of the 90s casserole. It was not a dish that was designed to be photographed. It was a dish that was designed to be eaten. It was a symbol of a time when the dinner table was a sacred space, a place where families could disconnect from the outside world and reconnect with each other. It was a time when the simple act of sharing a meal was enough to create a sense of belonging, a sense of home. And that is a lesson that is more relevant today than ever before. In a world that is increasingly fragmented and polarized, the simple act of breaking bread together has the power to heal and to unite. And the humble casserole, with its one-dish simplicity and its comforting, familiar flavors, is the perfect vehicle for that kind of connection. So the next time you find yourself yearning for a taste of the past, for a reminder of a simpler time, consider reaching for that can of cream of mushroom soup. Consider dusting off that old 9 by 13-inch baking dish. Consider making a casserole. It may not be the most glamorous meal you've ever made. It may not win you any awards, but it will be a meal that is made with love. It will be a meal that is steeped in memory, and it will be a meal that will warm you from the inside out. It's a taste of the 1990s, a tribute to the moms who made it all possible, and a reminder that sometimes the simplest things in life are the most satisfying. It's a warm, cheesy, and deeply comforting hug in a dish, and in a world that can often feel cold and uncertain, that is a very special thing indeed. It is a taste of home, a taste of childhood, a taste of a time when the world seemed a little bit smaller and a little bit kinder, and that is a taste that is worth savoring.